In August 1979, desert winds swept across the sand dunes of Fallon, Nevada, carrying dry, scorching heat and the whistle of wind through the rusted steel frame of the newly opened Sagewood Fun Park. Two 14-year-old girls, Melissa Turner and Joanne Price, left home with the smiles of budding teenagers and vanished in the midst of that blazing summer. Weeks later, the white van spotted near the park became a symbol of the fear that gripped the entire town. The search halted, the park closed, and the disappearance of the Fallon Girls fell into a silence that lasted 4 decades. No one expected that 46 years later, from an old notebook and a few forgotten DNA samples, that past would rise again, forcing all of Nevada to confront a crime that time had seemed to bury forever. Before diving deeper into this shocking true story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you love journeys to uncover forgotten justice, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next part. That summer of 1979, the town of Fallon, Nevada, lay still amid the arid plains and hot winds blowing through low dust-colored houses. The sky that day was cloudless. Two 14-year-old girls, Melissa Turner and Joanne Price, childhood best friends who attended Churchill County Middle School together, were eagerly awaiting the weekend break. The two had planned to head to Sagewood Fun Park, the new amusement area near Silver Springs, that they'd been looking forward to for months. Melissa brought along her brand new Polaroid camera, a birthday gift, while Joanne carried a mini radio playing the hit songs of the time. They left home in the early afternoon, amid neighbors' echoing calls and the crunch of bicycle tires on the sandy road. That was the last time anyone saw the two girls on the road heading south out of Fallon. A few hours later, a Silver Springs gas station attendant reported seeing the two girls stop to buy sodas and chat with two men in an old white Dodge van. The driver, who called himself Bob, said he could give them a ride to the park, since he was heading that way for work nearby. Another witness vaguely recalled seeing the van pull away from the station, kicking up a cloud of desert dust and disappearing toward the main road leading to the amusement area. As dusk fell, the families grew worried. Melissa and Joanne were supposed to be home before dinner, but by 8 p.m., there was still no sign of them. Joanne's father drove along the familiar roads, stopping at the gas station to question the attendant, but no one knew where they'd gone. At the Turner house, the baked goods her mother had prepared sat cold on the table. Both families called friends, neighbors, hospitals, and even Sagewood Fun Park itself, but none had the girls' names on their visitor lists. No one heard screams, no one saw a struggle, just two small shadows vanishing in the midst of a peaceful afternoon. The air in the Turner home grew heavier by the minute. The wall clock struck 9:40 p.m. when Mrs. Turner picked up the phone, her hand trembling with fear, and called the Fallon police station. Her voice was hoarse with worry as she reported that her daughter and her friend hadn't returned from their trip to Sagewood Fun Park. The missing persons report from the Turner family reached the Fallon Police Department that very night. Lieutenant Harold Beecham, 33 years old and newly assigned to Churchill County, was dispatched to the scene. He and 2 officers immediately went to the Turner home, took statements, and drove along the roads leading to the highway. In the darkness, flashlight beams swept over wooden fences, while Melissa's bicycle remained propped against the porch. All signs indicated the two girls had never made it home. The next morning, the disappearance was officially opened for investigation. The entire Fallon police force coordinated with the mounted patrol and dozens of volunteers to search around Highway 50, heading toward Silver Springs and the Sagewood Fun Park area. A helicopter from Reno was dispatched to scan the barren desert expanses, while on the ground, lines of people combed through every sand dune. Fallon residents, accustomed only to minor traffic accidents, witnessed a large-scale operation for the first time. On the second day, the rescue team found a silver bracelet engraved with MT in a patch of dry grass behind the park. Nearby was an unprocessed Polaroid film buried halfway in the sand. When developed, the photo revealed the rear end of a white van parked near the fence, with 2 blurry figures. This was the only evidence the police had. In the press conference, the Fallon Police Department determined that the two girls were likely abducted, with the suspect possibly traveling in a late 1970s white Dodge van. This description was sent to all law enforcement in Nevada. Sagewood Fun Park was cordoned off, and maintenance staff and witnesses in the area were all interrogated. A security guard said he'd seen a white vehicle parked near the Silver Serpent roller coaster that afternoon, but thought it was a repair truck. Police found a few tire tracks, but the wind and sand had blurred them. The main gate security camera had been broken since the start of the week, making verification nearly impossible. The search operation expanded. Local hunters brought tracking dogs to scour the deserts around Fallon, but to no avail. Lake LaHontaine, just under 10 miles from the park, was also dived for inspection, but nothing turned up except trash and dry branches. Beecham pinned a map of the area to the wall, marking searched locations with red dots that grew so dense they nearly covered the entire map. Throughout the first week, newspapers and radio stations covered the story relentlessly. The Nevada Appeal ran the headline, "Two Girls Vanish on Their Way to Fun Park," along with a call for community tips. Gas stations and motels along the highway posted photos of the two girls, but the calls that came in were mostly false leads. One person claimed to have seen them in Carson City, another in Reno. All wrong. Initial hope quickly gave way to fear. Beecham tried to stay composed in front of the press, but internally, the pressure mounted. Each day, the Turner and Price families came to the police station, sitting for hours in the hallway, waiting for news. They could still be alive, we just need to search in the right direction. Beecham told his colleagues, though he himself felt the despair spreading. By the fifth day, the Reno lab returned results. Blood stains on a cloth found near the park didn't match any records in the state database. There were no signs of violence at the scene, no direct witnesses, just an emptiness between a peaceful afternoon and the encroaching darkness. At the end of the first week, the search paused for plan reassessment. The helicopter made one final sweep over the desert, its spotlight scanning the empty lot behind the park, before turning back. Under the harsh sunlight, the ride stood silent, like statues. Sagewood Fun Park was officially closed temporarily for the investigation. Yellow police line "Do Not Cross" tape stretched around the gates, barring curious footsteps. Fallon fell into silence. Cafes dimmed their lights early, streets emptied. Each evening, the local radio aired a brief update on the missing girls, the announcer's voice fading to nothing. In the temporary command room, Beecham stared at the Polaroid photo on the table, the blurry outline of the white van in the frame, and knew this investigation wouldn't end anytime soon. 3 days after Sagewood Fun Park was cordoned off, a report from the Nevada State Highway Patrol reached Fallon. A patrol unit in Sparks, about 60 miles from the scene, had pulled over a white Dodge van for a broken taillight. The vehicle's description matched the one in the Polaroid photo recovered near the park. The two men inside identified themselves as Robert Bob Kessler, 24, and Lawrence Stein, 26, both from California, and working as traveling mechanics. They said they were en route to Reno to deliver auto parts. During the stop, an officer noticed dark brown streaks, resembling blood in the trunk, and a few long light brown hairs caught on the back seat. When questioned, Kessler claimed it was old paint and his girlfriend's hair. The vehicle's temporary Nevada plates were issued at a small garage in Carson City. Upon cross-checking, police noted inconsistencies in their stories. Kessler said they were delivering goods, while Stein said they were fixing an air conditioner. Though suspicious, they lacked legal grounds to hold them, as the Fallon disappearance hadn't yet been entered into the statewide alert system. The two were fined and released. When the faxed report arrived in Fallon, Harold Beecham immediately requested they be detained, but the vehicle had left the checkpoint over 2 hours earlier. He drove to Sparks, inspected the stop location, and noted detailed descriptions: white Dodge B200 with a slightly dented side door, temporary plates, and a long scratch on the rear. These features matched the reflection in the Polaroid. Beecham believed this was the vehicle tied to the disappearance. He promptly reported to the Nevada State Police, requesting checks along Interstate 80 routes toward Utah and California. Communication systems at the time were slow, hindering coordination. 2 days later, a Utah unit reported spotting a similar vehicle near Wendover, but couldn't get the plate number. After that, the van vanished. Beecham knew he was chasing time. Back in Fallon, he began scouring all garages, machine shops, and repair stations around the Reno-Carson City area, hoping someone recognized the names Kessler and Stein. No one did. A few mechanics vaguely recalled 2 strangers renting tools, but no paperwork confirmed it. Hand-drawn sketches were made. Kessler, brown hair, glasses, about 6 feet tall. Stein, shorter, black hair, angular face. As leads dried up, the Reno lab returned preliminary test results. The brown streak was type O blood, the most common in the U.S. population, and the long hairs lacked roots for analysis. Without DNA technology, all evidence was sealed and filed. For Beecham, it was the first dead end. He spent many nights in his office, staring at the imperfectly developed Polaroid, where harsh light glared off the van's window glass. A small dent on the side door stood out, a detail matching the Sparks officer's description. Though lacking proof, he believed these 2 men held the key to the case. When reporting to superiors, Beecham was told to wait for concrete information and shift resources to more urgent matters. But he didn't stop. In the following weeks, Beecham quietly contacted California agencies about Robert Kessler and Lawrence Stein. All responses were negative. No criminal records, no traffic violations, no clear permanent addresses. The 2 names seemed to vanish from the map. By late September, the Fallon police search was officially suspended. On Beecham's desk remained only a thin stack of files, the blurry Polaroid, and a handwritten note, Dodge van, do not overlook. Meanwhile, the Churchill County Sheriff's Department restructured its investigations unit, and Beecham was formally reassigned to lead the Fallon Girls' disappearance case. For him, the white van wasn't just the only lead, it was the boundary between 2 realities. One side the girls still alive in the fragile hope of their families, the other an invisible void no evidence could fill. For years afterward, Beecham referred to it as the ghost of the desert, a vehicle that had appeared, only to disappear forever, taking with it the answers he would never obtain. 3 weeks after the white Dodge van was stopped in Sparks and released, the Fallon Police Department officially assigned the Fallon Girls' 1,979 inches disappearance case to Detective Harold Beecham, a veteran investigator who had handled numerous kidnappings in the Churchill Desert area. Beecham, then 42 years old, was renowned for his meticulousness and absolute belief that every disappearance leaves a trail. On his first day with the file, he sat through the night rereading interrogation transcripts, comparing statements and timelines. He paid particular attention to the note from the duty officer that day. Witness saw 2 girls leaving the park with a brown-haired man in a gray jacket, wearing sunglasses, driving a white Dodge. The name Robert Kessler appeared faintly in the report, a short-term maintenance technician who had worked at Sagewood Fun Park the previous summer. Personnel records confirmed Kessler had been in charge of the Silver Wash maintenance area, the technical zone beneath the Silver Serpent roller coaster. Beecham began by combing through the entire list of employees who had ever worked at Sagewood, from security guards, electricians to service staff. Among more than 30 people, only 2 names matched the witness description: Robert Kessler and Lawrence Stein, his roommate at the workers' dormitory. However, both had left Nevada immediately after the police released them. Beecham marked their names in red pen, with a short note, "Can't be a coincidence." On September 12, 1979, he and 2 young officers requested permission from Sagewood management to inspect the Silver Wash area, but were denied for construction safety reasons. The technical area door was sealed, accessible only to maintenance personnel. When he tried circling around to the back, a strong smell of metal and cleaning agents wafted up from the ventilation slits. A nearby janitor whispered, "No one wants to go down there. At night, you hear nothing but machines and music." The remark prompted Beecham to jot in his notebook right away, "Silver Wash access at all costs." A few days later he found a new witness, Evelyn Harris, 19, a ticket seller at the park. She stated that on the night the two girls disappeared, around 10 p.m. While she was cleaning her booth, she heard a short scream, followed immediately by faint radio music coming from the technical area. "I thought it was the engineers playing music," she recounted, "but looking back that scream, it didn't sound like anyone joking around." Beecham requested a review of all evidence collected from the park. In the old file bag were a few strands of hair, dark fabric fibers, and dried bloodstains on the Dodge's rear mattress. He sent everything to the lab in Reno. However, in 1979, DNA technology wasn't applied. They could only determine blood type and hair color, type O brown hair. Ironically, this was the blood type of millions of Americans. The results came back with a cold conclusion: insufficient basis for identity comparison. Despite the lack of physical evidence, Beecham believed this wasn't simply two teenagers running away. He went door to door in homes around Silver Springs, asking passing drivers about the area that day. A middle-aged man named Carl Fincher said he had seen the white van parked on the park's edge around midnight, but thought it was just an employee's vehicle. No one noticed more. The media at the time began questioning, did the two girls run away from Fallon? The local Nevada Tribune ran a big headline, "Missing or Runaway: The Mystery of the Sagewood Girls." Articles emphasized that Melissa and Joanne were both energetic girls who might have sought adventure on their own, like American teens in the late 1970s. Public pressure divided the case. One side believed it was a kidnapping, the other thought runaway or lured away. Beecham was ordered to cut investigation costs due to no new evidence. He reacted strongly: "No child vanishes in the middle of the desert without leaving a trail." But his superiors only replied, "Harold, we can't chase ghosts." Frustrated, Beecham still investigated quietly on his own time. He visited Silver Wash every week, noting every change around the technical area, photographing the underground door, jotting wind directions and light timings. In one October photo, he spotted a faint silver paint streak on the steel door, matching the color of the Dodge van Kessler had driven. Not enough for evidence, but to him, it was a sign. In December 1979, the park partially reopened. Beecham met with the Sagewood director one last time, requesting a search warrant for the technical shed. He refused, saying no one wants to damage the park's reputation any further. Beecham only replied coldly, "Reputation can be rebuilt. Two lives cannot." Yet the case began to cool off. Volunteer search teams were pulled back, emergency budgets ended, the file was temporarily closed with the note, "Pending new evidence." But Beecham didn't give up. In his personal notebook, he wrote a line that later became a key for the next generation of investigators: "Silver Wash, check the technical area. There's something down there they don't want us to see." On the last night of the year, Beecham left the Fallon office, carrying the thick file box. As he closed the door, he looked at the Fallon map on the wall, where two small red dots marked Melissa and Joanne's names. He whispered, almost to himself, "I'll find you girls no matter how long it takes." That promise, 40 years later, was fulfilled by Karen Holt herself. But that winter of 1979, Beecham was just a lone man in the Nevada desert, trying to hold on to a case the whole world had begun to forget. In 1980, Sagewood Fun Park reopened, but the joy didn't return with it. Though the park was freshly painted and repaired, attendance dropped severely. Fallon residents whispered about it as the haunted park. Rumors spread throughout Churchill County that late at night, people still heard children's laughter and radio music echoing from the Silver Wash area, where the two teenagers had vanished. While the town began to forget, Detective Harold Beecham remained steadfast. Though the case was removed from the priority list, he investigated on his own. He collected reports, statements, and travel maps of Robert Kessler and Lawrence Stein, the two names he believed were connected. Both had worked as technicians at Sagewood in the summer of 1978, and coincidentally, they quit right after the disappearance. Beecham pinned their names in his notebook, underlined in red pen. Can't be random. He traveled all over Fallon and Reno, combing every trace. Kessler had done short-term work at a machine shop, then left the state, possibly for Arizona. Stein vanished completely from records. Beecham mapped their movements, connecting the places they'd appeared, and found all paths led back to Silver Wash Maintenance, the technical area beneath the Silver Serpent roller coaster. Convinced the secret lay beneath the park, Beecham submitted multiple requests for search warrants or excavations of the Silver Wash area, but they were repeatedly denied for lack of specific evidence. Sagewood management didn't want to dredge up the old story, fearing it would hurt revenue. Once Beecham returned to the scene and was stopped by security. He only said coldly, "I'm not looking for trouble, I'm looking for justice." Without support, he investigated alone. Every month, Beecham quietly visited the park, recording every change around the technical area. He drew detailed maps, marking ventilation pipes, underground wiring, and spots emitting the strange metallic smell. In his notebook, he wrote, "If there's a chance, check Silver Wash, technical level." That line was underlined twice in red ink. By mid-1983, the investigation budget was slashed heavily. A slew of disappearance cases were closed, including the Fallon Girls 1979. The words "pending new evidence" were stamped on the file cover, a temporary period for a case that never stopped in Beecham's mind. He still kept his personal file box in his desk drawer, a few Polaroid photos, dark fabric scraps, witness statement from Evelyn Harris, and a hand-drawn park map. When rereading the transcript about the scream and radio music from the technical area, he murmured, "I know you two are still down there." In 1985, Beecham read a small local news item, "Residents report strange chemical smell around Sagewood drainage system." He went there, but the technical area was fully fenced off. Standing behind the fence, he looked at the rusted roller coaster frame, and noted in his book, "They're hiding something underground." Then came personal tragedy. His wife passed away. Beecham took long leave, but the Fallon Girls file followed him everywhere. Neighbors said that every night, he sat at the table, staring at the old map, his hand trembling with the red pen, as if connecting scattered pieces of memory. When he returned to work, the case was completely forgotten. The new generation of police saw it as a local legend. A young officer once asked, "Why don't you let it go? No one cares anymore." Beecham only replied, "Justice doesn't need anyone to care, it just needs someone who doesn't quit." By 1989, he officially retired after 30 years of service. On his last day at the station, he carried a small box labeled FG, Fallon Girls. Before handing over, he sent a short letter to the Reno Police Archives storage. "If one day technology is advanced enough, try these samples again. Don't let them sleep in silence forever." That afternoon, Beecham left the building in the golden Nevada sun. In his hand was the brown leather notebook, the only thing he didn't turn in. The last page bore a shaky line, almost like a dying wish, "If I can't bring them home, someone surely will." 40 years later, that very line became the first clue Detective Karen Holt read in the old archives, the start of the journey to bring justice back to Fallon. Entering the early 1990s, the town of Fallon gradually forgot the names Melissa Turner and Joanne Price. The new generation only heard about them through rumors of the two Sagewood girls, while the real file gathered dust in the Reno Police Archives. An administrative clerk stuck a cold line on the file cover, "Missing under suspicious circumstances, cold case." From then on, the case officially went dormant. No more search teams, no investigators following up. Everything was just fragmented memories of those who had lived through that summer. Harold Beecham, now retired, still wouldn't let go. In his small house on the outskirts of Reno, he kept case file copies and the brown leather notebook. Occasionally, he'd open them, sitting for hours before the Sagewood Park map, crossing out technical paths, adding a few new lines. If there's a chance, retest the hair samples, fabric. To him the case wasn't over, just held back by time. But time was more merciless than he thought. The victims' families passed away one by one. Melissa's parents in the early 1990s. The Price family left Nevada without an address. With no relatives left, the missing persons file had no one requesting it be reopened. On paper it was closed. In Beecham's heart, it was an unkept promise. In the mid-1990s, Sagewood Fun Park deteriorated. Attendance dwindled, rides decayed, and rumors of the haunted park kept people away. A group of local students snuck in to film, the tape capturing wind whistling through steel pipes and faint echoes of radio music. Local TV aired it with the caption, "Where time stopped with the two Fallon Girls." By 1999, the park officially went bankrupt. Assets were sealed, the Silver Wash area welded shut for safety reasons. The Sagewood Fun Park sign broke in half, leaving only "Park" swinging in the wind. Beecham drove there one last time. He stood outside the rusted fence, watching the silver serpent collapse in the sunset, then noted in his book, "If justice is buried underground, this ground won't rest." In his final years Beecham lived in solitude. His wife gone, health declining, but his memory sharp. He followed articles on DNA technology starting to be used in California, and noted in his book, "One day, this technology will speak for the dead." Though he knew he didn't have much time left, he still believed someone would continue that journey. In March 2005, heart disease hospitalized Beecham. Before passing, he called his nephew over and instructed, "There's a notebook in the cabinet at home. If anyone asks about the Fallon Girls case, give it to them." The nephew nodded, not fully grasping the dying wish's meaning. On March 12, Harold Beecham died at age 76. The funeral was simple, attended by only a few old colleagues. One said, "He was the kind of cop who didn't know how to quit." After the service, the notebook was placed with the family heirlooms in storage, lying dormant for years. The last line in the book, written in red pen, "Silver Wash, check the technical area." That same year, the FG-79 case file was transferred to permanent storage. In a sealed envelope was Beecham's note, "Insufficient evidence, but don't forget them." No one opened it for 2 decades. As for Sagewood, after being sealed, it became ruins. Weeds overgrew the paths, the roller coaster frame rusted and tilted amid the sand. On windy nights, Fallon locals said they heard faint music rising from underground, the 1979 radio tune Melissa had brought. "Maybe Beecham's still there," one whispered, watching over them. 20 years later, DNA technology advanced leaps and bounds. Federal databases like CODIS and NAMUS expanded, allowing matches of millions of samples. During a routine review, a young clerk at Reno Police Archives accidentally pulled the wrong old box. Upon opening it, he saw a tightly sealed brown paper envelope, with faded handwriting outside. If one day technology is good enough, try again. No one expected that scrap of paper, along with Beecham's notebook, would be the key to reopening the case, after 46 years of silence. The justice he pursued his whole life was now just one generation away, and this time couldn't hold it back any longer. In the spring of 2023, Detective Karen Holt, 38 years old, was assigned to establish the Reno Cold Case Unit, a new unit dedicated to reviewing forgotten cases. She had previously worked in the Major Crimes Division, renowned for her tenacity and meticulousness. Upon receiving the assignment, Holt said only one thing: "If justice can sleep, then our job is to wake it up." The unit's office was located in the old basement of the Reno Police Department, Hundreds of dusty file boxes lay dormant for decades, each labeled with a code for a case gone cold. During the first inventory, Holt happened to pull out an old box with a faded label, FG79, Fallon Girls. Below it was a handwritten note in red pen. Insufficient evidence, but don't forget them. She opened it, and inside were a strand of hair, a fiber of fabric, a dried blood sample, and a fragment of a silver bracelet sealed from 1979. The yellowed sealing paper, with faded but legible signatures, bore the name Detective Harold Beecham. Beside it was a thin notebook, its pages dog-eared, with a shaky line at the end. Silver Wash, Underground Storage. Holt read it over and over, feeling as if she were hearing the voice of a long-deceased colleague echoing back. Beecham's notations, diagrams, and instructions all revolved around one location, the Silver Wash underground maintenance area beneath the Silver Serpent roller coaster. He had believed that was where the two Fallon girls disappeared, but no one had allowed him to excavate. Holt immediately proposed this case as the unit's opening investigation. During the meeting, an older officer objected, "Karen, this case is over 40 years old. Most witnesses are dead," she replied succinctly, "but the evidence is still alive." In the first week, Holt sent all the biological samples to the FBI's Quantico lab. With 2023 technology, even a small portion of a hair strand or dried blood could yield DNA, something unimaginable in 1979. She included a request, cross-reference with the National CODIS database. In parallel, Holt tracked down the land records for Sagewood Fun Park. In the original 1978 blueprints, she clearly saw the Silver Wash engineering system buried 3 meters underground, connected to the sewer network. Part of the map was stamped restricted, a no-access area. She noted, Beecham was right, the underground level exists. Holt's investigative team also searched a NamUs National Missing and Unidentified Persons System. There were no body reports matching Melissa Turner or Joanne Price, but the list of personal effects in the 1979 file, a silver bracelet engraved MT, a star-shaped keychain, exactly matched the archive descriptions. This confirmed the case had never truly been closed, only buried by time. That night, Holt sat alone in the office. She spread the file across the desk, reading Beecham's lines from over 40 years ago. Radio music. Chemical smell. No one wants me to excavate. They're down there. She whispered, "You stopped here but I won't." A week later, the lab sent an email. Dried blood sample viable for DNA analysis. Holt nearly held her breath. 46 years, and the blood still had its story to tell. She immediately signed the request to match the sample against the National CODIS system. While awaiting results, Holt drove to Fallon to see with her own eyes where it all began. The small town, quiet, nearly forgotten amid the Nevada desert. The site that was once Sagewood Fun Park was now just rusted iron frames, weeds, and tilting signs. Under the sunset, the word fun was gone, leaving only Sagewood Park, stark against the sand. She stood at the fence, holding the old map, her eyes fixed on the Silver Wash area. Everything Beecham had suspected now became an obsession in her. 3 days later, Holt received an urgent call from Quantico. The technician's voice trembled. "We have the results. The DNA sample is a perfect match to a profile in CODIS." "Whose name?" Holt asked. "Robert Clark Kessler, 70 years old, residing in Prescott, Arizona." She went silent for a few seconds, looking at the old Polaroid with the silhouette of a man standing next to a white van. In that faded photo, history had just been rewritten. Holt printed the results, placing them beside Beecham's notebook. His final line stood out under the desk lamp, "If someone finds it, justice will awaken." She said softly, almost replying to him, "Justice is awake, Harold, and this time, it won't sleep again." That night, Holt sat alone once more in the cold case unit office. On the wall, amid the new case photos, she added 2 black and white portraits, Melissa Turner and Joanne Price. Below the photos, she wrote a short line in red pen, "Reopened, May 2023. From that moment, the 1979 Fallon Girls case was officially revived, not just an old memory of Nevada, but a declaration of war between a young investigator and the ghosts of the past that time could not erase. 3 days after the call from Quantico, the FBI lab sent a detailed 12-page report back to Reno. On the first page, the bolded text made Detective Karen Holt unable to look away. DNA sample matches Robert Clark Kessler, male, born 1955, current residence, Prescott, Arizona. Kessler, the name that Detective Harold Beecham had circled for over 4 decades, now appearing clearly, no longer a hunch. Under the notes, it also stated, secondary partial DNA match. Lawrence J. Stein, deceased 2005. Both men had been suspects in 1979, finally confirmed by technology. Holt set the report down, a chill spreading through her body. Beecham's lines from the old notebook now seemed to come alive. Kessler and Stein. Silver wash, can't be coincidence. He had been right, just too early for his era. She immediately opened the old Sagewood Fun Park personnel files. The documents clearly stated, Robert C. Kessler, maintenance engineer, employed May, August 1978, duties, electrical maintenance, underground engineering systems, Silver Wash maintenance area. Note at the end, employee had access to restricted areas. That line made Holt sit up straight. Kessler had once had clearance to enter and exit the exact area Beecham believed was where the 2 girls vanished. Holt pulled out the park's engineering map she had obtained from the land office. On the paper, she marked the Silver Wash entrance in red pen, then connected the points: electrical control room, storage area, emergency exit. The structure was almost a maze. If someone wanted to hide something down there, she whispered, they had a whole underground city. She accessed the Nevada State Personnel Archives, confirming Kessler now lived in Prescott, Arizona, in a quiet residential area north of the city. Occupation, retired air conditioning technician. Since 2010, he had lived alone, no criminal record, no mental health files. To outsiders, Kessler was just an ordinary old man. But to Holt, he was the missing piece of a tragedy spanning 46 years. Holt printed all the data, compiling a report to reopen the Fallon Girls' 1979 case. In the presentation, she outlined 3 key points. DNA sample from the blood in the Dodge van matches Robert Kessler perfectly. Secondary DNA sample matches Lawrence Stein, deceased in 2005. Kessler was a maintenance engineer at Sagewood, with access to the Silver Wash underground engineering level, the suspected location in the original file. The Washoe County prosecutor read the report, silent for a long time before saying, if that's the case, Holt, we're not just reopening the case, we're rewriting Nevada's history. On June 7, 2023, the Fallon Girls' 1979 case was officially reopened. Holt stood before the investigation board in the Cold Case Unit office, pinning up 2 black and white photos, Melissa Turner, 14, and Joanne Price, 14. Below them, she added a sketch of Robert Kessler at age 24 in 1979, and a recent portrait provided by Prescott Police: silver hair, gaunt face, but eyes still sharp and cold. All night, Holt didn't go home. She reread Beecham's entire journal. The scribbled lines, sometimes just a few words: met Sagewood manager, refused. Silver wash smells metallic, not allowed to dig. Amid the old pages, she found a copy of the 1983 excavation request Beecham had submitted to the court, stamped rejected. Below it, he had handwritten, I won't give up. Now Holt understood why Beecham held onto the file until his death. He didn't need praise, he just needed someone to carry it to the end of the road. The next morning, she met with the team. The Fallon map, stretched across the wall, red string connecting from Reno to Prescott, then looping back to Sagewood Park. Holt pointed at the map, everything begins and ends here. Silver wash. One investigator asked, what's the next step? She replied firmly, find what he hid. Holt contacted the Prescott Police Department, requesting discreet surveillance on Kessler. His travel records showed he still drove to Nevada monthly, for unknown reasons. Upon hearing that, Holt said only, "He's returning to the park, maybe to make sure the secret hasn't been uncovered." Before leaving the office, Holt looked again at the final line in Beecham's notebook. "If someone reads this, go down to the Silver Wash underground level." She gently closed the notebook, her gaze resolute. Now all the pieces, DNA, location, personnel, and history, converged on one point. Beecham had reached the final wall of his era. Holt, with new technology and conviction, was about to break through it. As the sun set behind the Sierra Nevada range, she called Prosecutor Halverson. "We have enough to start the scene investigation. I'll head to Fallon this weekend." "You think he's still there?" Holt looked out the window, the Reno wind gusting hard enough to rustle the file on her desk. "No," she said slowly. "I think he never left." And so, after 46 years, the Fallon Girls story officially left the archives to step into the new century, where technology, memory, and tenacity intersect, opening a new chapter for justice in Nevada. With all evidence pointing to Sagewood, Detective Karen Holt decided to return to the scene herself. The site once known as Sagewood Fun Park, now just a desert wind-buried ruin. She entered with the forensics team and 2 Fallon officers through the rusted chain-link fence. The old sign tilted amid the sand, still faintly reading Silver Serpent, Ride of the Summer. Time had turned the once vibrant park into a scrapyard of rusted steel, cracked concrete, and eerie silence. Holt unrolled the map Beecham had drawn, noting Silver Wash, check engineering area. The forensics team used ground-penetrating radar to scan around the roller coaster foundation. After over 2 hours, the screen showed a void about 3 meters deep. The technician pointed to the center of the map. "There's an empty chamber here." The group cleared the scrap metal and uncovered an iron door welded shut, hidden under cracked concrete. The welds were old and rusted, indicating it had been sealed decades ago. When the mechanic cut the lock, a smell of metal and dry dust wafted up. Holt shone her flashlight, descending the rusted iron ladder. Below was a small engineering room, low-ceilinged, walls draped in cobwebs and peeling paint. The dim light swept over old pipes, a workbench, and rusted toolboxes. Everything was thick with dust, but in the corner, something made her pause. A frayed green fabric rope, knotted at one end, and worn draped over a pipe. Under the light, she spotted a long brown strand of hair, caught on nearby metal. The technician quickly sealed the sample. Upon closer scanning, they found a broken silver bracelet fragment, the inside engraved with Miss, matching the MT bracelet discovered outside the fence in 1979. The room was freezing, with only the wind whistling through cracks. Holt stood silent, as if hearing again the scratches of the 2 girls once trapped here. On the walls were faint scratch marks at hand height, and the cement floor bore dark, dried streaks. When the UV light was turned on, tiny glowing spots appeared around the wall corner, reacting to biological trace chemicals. "Likely blood," the technician said softly. Holt just nodded. Everything matched Beecham's suspicions, in a terrifying way. On a wooden shelf, she even found a rusted nameplate. R.C. Kessler, maintenance technician. No more words were needed. The man who had worked here was the one with access to the engineering area, and likely the last person the 2 girls saw. Holt emerged from the room as the sun hung low. The sunset light filtered through the rusted roller coaster frame, casting long shadows on the sand. She stood gazing at the park, imagining the summer afternoon of 1979, echoing music, children's screams, and 2 14-year-old girls laughing by the ride entrance. Now only silence remained. Just a few meters away, the underground room had held the secret for over 40 years. That evening, Holt brought all the samples back to Reno. Preliminary forensics confirmed the DNA in the hair strand matched Melissa Turner, stored in the NameUse database. The fabric rope contained male sweat traces consistent with Robert Kessler's genetic profile. The silver bracelet fragment perfectly matched the piece found in 1979. Two halves of the same piece of jewelry. 3 samples, 3 pieces of evidence, all pointing to the same man. Holt carefully noted in the report, engineering storage under the roller coaster matches Beecham's notation location. High likelihood this was the victim's holding site. Biological traces consistent with victims and suspect Kessler. She reread Beecham's note once more. Silver wash, check engineering area. His shaky handwriting now felt like guidance from the past. After 40 years, Holt had found what he left behind. The next morning, she returned to Fallon alone to take additional photos. As she entered the park, Holt paused at the rusted gate. Against the dusty sky, the silver serpent roller coaster frame coiled like a steel snake in the sunlight. She opened Beecham's notebook, adding a line under the final page. Found silver wash, engineering storage. You were right. Standing in the desert silence, Holt realized this place was not just a crime scene, but a bridge between 2 generations of investigators. Beecham left the question, and she had found the answer. The newly collected evidence, the hair strand, the rope, the bracelet, were the voices of the 2 forgotten girls, finally heard again, after 40 years. In the report to the Washoe prosecutor, Holt concluded, the silver wash room is confirmed as the victim's holding site prior to murder. Recommend full excavation of the expanded area. For the first time since 1979, the Fallon Girls file was no longer dust-covered. On the sands of Sagewood, Holt's footprints overlaid the faint old traces, linking 2 journeys. Beneath the soil, the truth was being gradually pulled to the surface, something time, fear, and silence had tried to bury for nearly half a century. The appraisal results at Sagewood were sufficient for Detective Karen Holt to move to the next phase, tracking Robert Kessler, the prime suspect in the Fallon Girls case. The file indicated he lived in Prescott, Arizona, in a small log cabin on East Gurley Street, in a quiet retirement community. The 70-year-old man, with silver hair and a lean build, lived alone, and hardly anyone in the neighborhood knew about his past. Holt and the local police began secret surveillance. Neighbors described Kessler as polite and reserved, getting up early each morning for coffee, reading the paper, and taking walks. However, every mid-month, he would disappear for a few days. He said he was going to Nevada to visit an old friend in Fallon. One female neighbor recounted, "But I've never seen anyone come back to visit him." That answer put Holt on alert. Fallon, exactly where the Sagewood Park once stood. She rented a small apartment near Kessler's house and set up surveillance cameras. On the first day, he left home at 6 in the morning, driving his silver 2002 Ford Ranger, filling up gas, buying coffee, then leaving town. His movements were slow and normal, but his eyes always darted quickly to the rearview mirror. After 3 weeks of tracking, Holt discovered the repeated route, leaving Prescott, heading along Interstate 40, then turning onto Highway 50 toward Silver Springs, Nevada. The technical team secretly attached a tracking device to the vehicle. The signal showed Kessler stopping for hours in an empty area, right at the location of Silver Wash, where Holt had discovered the maintenance shed under the roller coaster. For an entire year, he continued returning there regularly, like an unbreakable habit. To Holt, that behavior was no different from a silent confession. The killer always returns to the place where he buried his secrets. On June 11, 2025, Kessler left Prescott earlier than usual. Holt coordinated with Fallon police for remote monitoring. As dusk fell, the Ford Ranger stopped in the lot that was once Sagewood Park. Infrared camera footage captured him holding a bunch of wild flowers and a flashlight, heading straight to the Silver Wash maintenance area, the entrance to the maintenance shed now sealed off. He stood still for a very long time, head bowed as if whispering to someone, then placed the flowers down before leaving. The next morning, Holt arrived at the scene. The flowers were still there, next to a rock engraved with an M, using a sharp object. She immediately understood its meaning. That man had returned here for many years, not to commemorate anyone else, but to make sure the secret was still hidden under the sand. Holt sent a detailed itinerary report to the Washoe County District Attorney's Office, requesting an expanded surveillance warrant. While awaiting approval, she continued digging into Kessler's past. The old garage he once owned was still operating. The new manager recounted, he sold this place back in 1989, but he'd stop by every month to check on things. Inside there were some Nevada photos hanging up, one labeled Silver Wash, 1982. Holt asked to see them, but the manager said Kessler had taken them away last year, right before burning a pile of old stuff in the backyard. Those small details formed a single thread. Kessler had never escaped Nevada, at least not in his mind. Each trip seemed like a guilty man's ritual inspection. Holt believed he returned to ensure no one discovered the crime scene. That obsession was his greatest weakness. From late June, Holt coordinated with the FBI to implement covert surveillance. Agents collected gas receipts, toll tickets, and roadside camera footage along the travel route. They discovered Kessler always stopped to rest at the exact towns that lay along the 1979 bus route to Fallon, as if he were reenacting his old journey. As Holt reviewed the footage, she recalled the note in Beecham's notebook, "The killer will return to the place where he believes he got away with it." 40 years earlier, he had written that as a psychological observation. Now Kessler's behavior was living proof of that observation. Late at night, Holt wrote in her investigation journal, "Kessler travels Prescott, Silver Springs monthly. Stops at Silver Wash Shed location, repetitive, obsessive behavior. Possibly monitoring or protecting something once hidden." Outside the window, the streetlights of Prescott reflected on the computer screen, where Kessler's travel map was clearly displayed, a closed loop starting in Arizona and ending in Fallon. Holt looked at the red dots on the map, a strange feeling rising in her heart. The past wasn't just returning, it was leading her down its own path. The search warrant was prepared. The next time Kessler left home, Holt would no longer just follow him. She would bring the justice for the lost girls, to end the journey that Beecham had begun nearly half a century earlier. 3 weeks after tracking Robert Kessler's itinerary, the Yavapai County Court officially approved the search warrant. Early morning on July 4, 2025, the Federal Task Force and Reno Cold Case Unit arrived at his small house in Prescott, Arizona, a weathered log cabin at the end of a quiet street, surrounded by dried cacti. Kessler, now 70 years old, opened the door in a dark shirt, his eyes weary. Holt presented the warrant. He just nodded, stepping back inside without resistance. The inside of the house was clean to the point of being chilling. On the walls hung a few Nevada landscape photos, Lake Lahontan, the Fallon Desert, and a rusted "Welcome to Silver Springs" sign. Holt recognized the clear obsession with the past. The forensics team split up to check every room. In the garage, amid neatly arranged mechanic tools, they discovered a wooden box labeled Tools 1979. When the lid was opened, everyone fell silent. Inside were a stack of Polaroid photos, a silver bracelet, a cassette tape, and a Nevada map. Holt carefully lifted each item out. The first photo showed 2 teenage girls, Melissa Turner and Joanne Price, standing in front of the Silver Serpent roller coaster fence, smiling radiantly in the sun. In the corner of the photo was faint handwriting, August 15, Sagewood. The silver bracelet engraved MT matched exactly the fragment once found outside the park. When Holt placed the cassette tape into the player, static crackled, followed by a raspy male voice, "Bob, hurry up." Then a short, interrupted scream. The room went dead silent. She turned off the tape, took a deep breath, and signaled to seize all the evidence. In the desk drawer, police also found a Nevada map with red circles around the Silver Wash area, and arrows connecting Fallon to Prescott, along with a copy of Kessler's employment contract at Sagewood Enterprises for the summer of 1979. Each detail matched the old file. When Holt turned back, Kessler was still sitting quietly in the chair, eyes staring blankly out the window. "I just gave them a ride," he said softly. Holt replied, "But you kept their pictures for 40 years. In the bedroom, investigators discovered a shoebox containing women's items, hair clips, rubber bands, Reno movie tickets from 1979, all wrapped separately and labeled with dates. Clear evidence of a sick hoarding habit. In the corner of the room, there was also a mug printed with Silver Serpent Crew. Holt said nothing, just requested everything be sealed. All the evidence was transported to the Reno Forensics Lab. The analysis results confirmed. DNA on the bracelet and hair in the photo box matched Melissa Turner. Fingerprints on the map and cassette belonged to Kessler. The audio forensics lab affirmed the voice on the tape was his, matching the sample recorded in Prescott. No doubt left. Holt filed an urgent report to the Washoe County prosecutor. The final line read, "Sufficient grounds to request arrest warrant for Robert C. Kessler, charges of kidnapping and first-degree murder." That afternoon, the warrant was signed. When police returned, Kessler was still sitting on the porch, eyes distant. "You found it all, huh?" he asked quietly. Holt replied, "Even what you thought you'd buried deepest." He didn't resist when handcuffed, just gave a weary faint smile. The Prescott desert wind picked up, swirling dust around the porch. The Nevada landscape photos still hung in their places, like witnesses to a past their owner could never escape. After 46 years, the Fallon Girls' 1,979 inches case finally had answers, and the man who had quietly lived among ordinary folks now had to face the darkness he himself had created. On the morning of March 12, 2025, the air in Prescott, Arizona was dry and cold. The arrest warrant for Robert Clark Kessler, 70 years old, was approved by the Yavapai County Court, after final forensics confirmed his DNA matched the sample collected from Sagewood Fun Park in 1979. The Federal Task Force and Reno Cold Case Unit surrounded the small house at the end of East Gurley Street. When police knocked, Kessler was already sitting on the porch, coffee cup in hand. He showed no surprise, just said softly, "I knew you'd come." Holt read the arrest warrant, listing the charges: kidnapping, unlawful confinement, and first-degree murder. He responded calmly, "I never killed anyone. I just took them for a ride, then left before dark." That statement sent a chill through Holt. It was so cold and emotionless, as if the past were just a distant memory. Kessler was handcuffed and escorted to the police car. As the vehicle left Prescott, Holt looked in the rearview mirror. He sat straight, eyes fixed out the window, calm to a terrifying degree. News of the arrest spread within hours. TV stations broadcast simultaneously. Fallon Girls case, suspect arrested after 46 years. Newspapers across Nevada and Arizona were flooded with images of the silver-haired old man, next to a photo of the young Sagewood technician in 1979. The story shocked local residents. At Prescott Police Headquarters, Holt attended the first interrogation. Kessler sat in the middle of the room, next to his court-appointed lawyer. He kept an even tone, occasionally giving a faint smile. "I remember the two girls," he said when asked about Melissa and Joanne. "I gave them a ride from Silver Springs to the park. They said they wanted to take a few pictures and go home. I left after that. If they disappeared, that's not my fault." When Holt presented the Polaroid photos and cassette tape, he glanced briefly, then turned away. "I'm not saying more." The interrogation ended in under half an hour, short and cold, like his own voice. The next afternoon, police extradited Kessler to Nevada, under federal procedure. On the flight from Phoenix to Reno, he was silent the whole way. Holt sat behind, observing his silver head and slightly trembling hands, the only sign of age, not remorse. News of his extradition to Reno exploded immediately. Dozens of reporters gathered outside Washoe County Courthouse. The Nevada Chronicle ran the headline, "Cold Case Breakthrough, suspect in Fallon disappearance, arrested after decades. Old Fallon residents from back then burst into tears watching the news. An old neighbor of the Turner family said, "Harold Beecham waited for this day his whole life. It's just a shame he's not here to see it." On March 15th, Kessler appeared for his preliminary hearing. He wore an orange prison jumpsuit, hands trembling slightly, as he was escorted into the courtroom. When the judge asked if he understood the charges, he replied softly, "I understand, but I'm innocent." Holt sat in the back row, eyes never leaving him. 46 years, 2 lives, and now a frail old man facing belated justice. The media followed every detail. News channels aired footage of the Sagewood scene, where yellow tape still stretched around the silver wash maintenance shed. Young people in Fallon, who only knew the case from their parents' stories, now watched it unfold on TV. Meanwhile, Reno police conducted a second search of Kessler's house, seizing an additional box of photos, a few letters, and a personal notebook. In it, one page had a scrawled line, "Silver Serpent, return to check." Holt read that, and knew he had returned to the scene many times, just as the tracking signals she had followed indicated. That night, Holt returned to the cold case office. Her desk was buried in files. In the middle, 2 photos, the 1979 Polaroid of the 2 teenage girls, and a shot of Kessler at his arrest. She placed them side by side, 2 pieces of a story closed after nearly half a century. Outside, Reno TV aired the late news. Light from the screen cast on the investigation board in the office, where red strings connected the words Sagewood, Silver Wash, Beecham, Kessler. Holt stared at it for a long time, then wrote in her report, "Suspect Roberts. Kessler denies guilt, but behavior, DNA, and physical evidence affirmed direct connection to Sagewood scene. Case shocks Nevada, closing a nearly half-century pursuit." When she turned off the light, the room held only moonlight through the glass. On the wall, the photos of the 2 Fallon girls still smiled, the 14-year-old smiles, frozen in 1979, now finally seen again in the light of justice. After Kessler was arrested, Detective Karen Holt continued sifting through old files, focusing on the name Lawrence Stein, the man whose DNA was a secondary match in the 1979 sample. Stein had died in El Paso, Texas in 2005, but Holt believed he knew more than what the record showed. When she contacted the El Paso Police Department, she discovered a 1986 notation while incarcerated for theft. Stein had told a cellmate about a guy named Bob and a park in Nevada. Holt followed the lead and tracked down that cellmate, Henry Dillard, now living in Lubbock. On the phone, Dillard spoke slowly. "I remember him saying Bob still goes back to the park. I thought he was joking, but he emphasized it. Bob has to make sure no one digs up that spot. When I asked where, he just grinned, Silver Wash, where we buried the past." The words sent a chill down Holt's spine. She realized right away that going back to the park wasn't just an obsession, it was a reference to the burial site. It all suddenly clicked. Kessler's regular trips to Nevada, his hours-long stops at Silver Wash, and Stein's mention of the grave for the past. The 2 men hadn't just worked together at Sagewood, they had hidden something horrific together. Holt pulled out the map of the Silver Wash maintenance area again. The previous year, her team had only excavated the main technical area under the roller coaster. If Stein's words were true, the bodies might be in the northern section, where the park had expanded in 1980 before being abandoned. She compiled a warrant application for expanded excavation and sent it to the Churchill County Court, attaching Dillard's statement and Kessler's travel data. 3 days later, the warrant was approved. Holt returned to Fallon with the forensics team. The Nevada desert stretched out, silent, under the afternoon sun. She felt like she was stepping onto the same path Beecham had once taken, except now, they had the technology and evidence strong enough to end the story. The ground-penetrating radar (GPR) machine started up, moving slowly across grid sections in the northern part of Silver Wash. After nearly 2 hours, The screen showed an anomaly, a void about 1.5 meters deep. The technicians switched to manual digging. Just minutes later, as the first layer of sandy soil was brushed away, a piece of pinkish silver fabric appeared. Holt knelt down, her hand lightly touching the decayed cloth, then a small curved smooth bone fragment, unmistakable. No one said a word. They didn't need to. They knew this was where the two girls had been hidden for over 40 years. Holt stared at the fabric, recognizing it matched the description of the blouse Joanne Price had worn on the day she disappeared. The wind blew through, carrying a thin layer of sand over the site, as if trying to hold on to one last secret. Mark the location, secure the area, Holt ordered softly. Her voice caught, but it remained steady. In her mind, she recalled the last line in Beecham's notebook, "Silver wash, check the technical area." He had been right, he just hadn't had enough time to go further. As the sun set, the red glow of dusk covered the dig site. Holt stood silently, watching the forensics team seal the scene, her heart heavy. 46 years, and finally, they had found them. That evening, in her report to the prosecutor, Holt wrote concisely, "The testimony of Lawrence Stein has been corroborated by a witness. Robert Kessler's returning to the park's behavior indicates intent to check the burial site. Recommend full excavation of the Silver Wash area, high likelihood of finding additional remains." Beneath that line, she added a handwritten note, "Small but meaningful, we went back to the park, and this time, it's to bring them home." 2 days after the GPR signal, the Silver Wash area was officially cordoned off. The Fallon Desert baked under harsh sunlight, gusts of wind carrying red dust. Detective Karen Holt and the Nevada State Forensics team set up a field camp around the old roller coaster area of Sagewood Fun Park. Grid sections were marked, bounded by caution tape and aluminum stakes. This was the largest excavation in Churchill County in over 3 decades. On the morning of the third day, as the forensics team pushed deeper into the collapsed concrete foundation of the Silver Wash technical room, the GPR screen clearly showed 2 anomalies side by side, just over a meter below the surface. Holt signaled to stop the machine. No one spoke a word, only the wind and the sound of shovels hitting earth remained. Layers of sand were gently brushed away, then chunks of broken concrete revealed softer soil beneath. A technician called out softly, "Fabric, dark color." Holt stepped closer, bending down. Under the soil was a small floral fabric scrap, decayed, but still recognizable as matching the pattern of the dress Melissa Turner was described as wearing in the 1979 file. As they cleared a few more layers of sand, a small skeletal hand emerged, still wearing a silver bracelet engraved with MT. The final piece connecting 46 years of waiting. About a meter away, the forensics team uncovered the second skeleton, smaller, lying tilted toward the north. At the left knee, a remnant of pinkish silver fabric remained, exactly the color of Joanne Price's blouse in the Polaroid photo. Next to the remains was a white ked sneaker, the sole hardened, but the shape intact. Once the positions of the 2 sets of remains were confirmed, Holt stood motionless for a long time. She didn't need anyone to say more, it was all clear. While the forensics team worked, Holt scanned the underground room. In the western corner, amid the dry soil and pile of rubble bricks, a dull metallic glint caught the flashlight beam. She bent down and picked it up. A old Polaroid camera, cracked body, peeling paint. The film roll inside was partially unprocessed, the paper edges stuck tight. She bagged it as evidence, labeling it, "Found near body #2. As the sun climbed high, the technicians continued the careful excavation of soil layers around the 2 bodies. Next to Joanne's arm bones, they found a star-shaped keychain, the back engraved with JP, the birthday gift from her mother, clearly noted in the missing persons file. Every detail matched perfectly. Holt stood still, clutching Beecham's notebook tightly. On the last page, the shaky handwriting "Silver Wash, check the technical area," had now become reality. By late afternoon, as the slanting sunlight hit the excavation pit, the on-site technicians performed preliminary identification. They determined both sets of remains showed traces of wrists bound with decayed fabric cord, matching the type of rope found in the previous technical storage. The interim report concluded, cause of death likely strangulation or asphyxiation. As the two sets of remains were lifted into specialized nylon bags, Holtz knelt on the ground, her eyes never leaving them. She felt as if the two Fallon girls, Melissa and Joanne, were finally being called back by name. In the distance, the Nevada desert was silent, only the wind whistling through the rusted roller coaster frame, like whispers from the past. Back in Reno, Holt immediately sent the recovered Polaroid to the FBI photo lab in Las Vegas. The film was damp and stuck, but the silver halide recovery experts could still process the layers. 3 days later, she got a short call, "Detective, you need to see this." At the lab, the technician handed Holt 3 developed prints. The first 2 were almost completely ruined, only faint shadows of park fencing visible. But the third was different. Under the blue light of the UV lamp, the image emerged clearer than anything Holt had ever seen. Against the gray sky of Sagewood stood a man in sunglasses, next to a white Dodge van, the body reflecting sunlight. In the far edge of the frame, the small silhouettes of Melissa and Joanne hovered, as if walking closer. The room fell deathly silent. The technician whispered, "This photo might have been taken minutes before they disappeared." Holt stared at it for a long time. The build, the posture, the profile, all matched Robert Kessler from the 1979 file. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but because finally, they had visual evidence of the moment of the crime. The photo was sealed as evidence #47, recovered Polaroid, unprocessed, silver wash. It would be the final piece, closing the circle of justice. That evening, Holt returned to Fallon. She sat alone by the sealed excavation site, watching moonlight spill over the ground where the two girls had just been found. In the wind, sand whispered through the old fences of Sagewood, sounding like distant laughter. She wrote in the end-of-day report, 2 sets of remains identified as belonging to Melissa Turner and Joanne Price. Evidence matches 1979 descriptions. Damaged Polaroid camera, contained unprocessed film roll. Final image captures suspect Kessler in front of white van. Excavation complete. Case proceeds to prosecution phase. Holt closed the notebook and looked up at the Fallon sky. After nearly half a century, the Nevada desert had finally returned the truth it had held in its heart for 46 years. When the excavation results and the Polaroid photo were released, Detective Karen Holt knew it was time to confront Robert Kessler directly. The interrogation took place at the Washoe County Detention Center, where he was being held pending trial. The small interview room had harsh white lights casting down on the weathered face of the 70-year-old man. Holt placed 3 items on the table: the DNA report, photos of the remains, and the newly developed Polaroid. "Do you know what this is?" she asked. Kessler glanced at the photo, his eyes darkening briefly. "That's my van," he said quietly. "And the man in the photo?" Holt pressed. He was silent for a few seconds, then sighed. "Yeah, it's me." Holt opened the file folder. "Your DNA matches the blood sample in the van, on the fabric cord, and on the victim's bracelet. The bodies of the 2 girls were found under the silver wash technical room. We have the cassette tape you recorded in the summer of 1979. Do you have anything to say?" Kessler looked up, his gaze distant. "I didn't mean to kill them. I just wanted to talk." His voice was hoarse, slow, and weary. "That night, they came to the park, wandered into the technical area. I just scared them a little. Then things got out of hand." Holt said nothing, just turned on a small tape recorder. Static hissed, then Stein's voice echoed from the old tape found among his belongings in Texas. "Bob, don't. They're too young," followed by scuffling sounds, the slam of an iron door, and heavy breathing. Stein's voice choked. "We have to hide them, under the technical room." The room went silent. Kessler bowed his head, hands clasped tightly. "I didn't think anyone still had that tape," he said, his voice dropping. "Lawrence, he was weak-hearted. I told him never to talk about it, but he was obsessed. After he died, I still dreamed of him standing at the park gate, asking, 'Did we do the right thing?'" Holt kept her gaze steady. You call that right? Burying two 14-year-old girls under the floor of the place you worked. Kessler shook his head, his voice trembling slightly. I didn't plan to leave them there forever. I thought I'd go back, to get them out, but I couldn't. Every year I'd return to Silver Wash, to see if anyone had found them. I was scared of getting caught, scared of seeing them again. He paused, swallowing hard. Lawrence dug the hole. I just helped cover it. After that, he went to Texas. I thought he'd stay quiet, but he'd send letters saying, Bob, they'll find out. I burned them all, but I still went back to the park every year like a punishment. Holt pulled out another photo, the remains of the two girls laid side by side in sealed bags. They're still next to each other, just like the day they disappeared. Do you have anything to say to them? Kessler stared for a long time. His eyelids fluttered, then 2 tears rolled down his dry cheeks. I'm sorry, he whispered. I was wrong. I don't know why it went that far. I just remember that night, they were terrified, and I lost control. When they stopped breathing, I thought my life was over. But year after year, I kept living, pretending to forget. Holt recorded every word. His voice was raspy, but the words were clear. He admitted to abducting the 2 girls at the park, holding them in the Silver Wash technical storage, and hiding the bodies under the floor with Stein. When asked for a motive, he only replied, I didn't want them found. If they just vanished, it would all blow over. She placed the notebook in front of him. Do you want to sign the statement? Kessler took the pen, his hand shaking. He signed his full name, Robert Clark Kessler, then pushed the papers back, saying softly, finally, I can stop going back to the park. As Holt left the interview room, prosecutor Mark Halverson stepped in. He whispered, you just got what the whole state of Nevada waited 40 years for. Holt only replied, no, I just finished the story. Beecham started. That afternoon, at the press conference in Reno, the prosecutor announced the official confession. Dozens of reporters crowded the courthouse steps. When the Polaroid photo was projected on the large screen, the silhouette of the man in sunglasses standing in front of the white Dodge van, the room fell silent. This is the last moment the 2 victims were seen alive, Halverson said, and the man in the photo has confessed to every crime. The press dubbed the case, the Fallon Girls' confession. National TV replayed the Stein tape along with coverage of Kessler's admission. The nation was stunned by the detail of him returning to the scene for years to make sure no one found them. That evening, Holt returned to the office. The investigation board on the wall was still covered in red string. Now in the center, she pinned a new note, confession signed, March 18, 2025. Below the words, the photo of the 2 Fallon girls smiling in the 1979 sunlight. She murmured, as if to Beecham, you were right, Harold. In the end, he came back himself. Outside, the night wind from the desert blew through the window. Inside, Holt closed the Fallon Girls' 1,979 inches file, the coldest case in Nevada, now with a confession, and 2 small souls finally at rest. In June 2025, the city of Reno, Nevada, entered a sweltering summer, and it was also the time when the Fallon Girls' 1,979 inches case was officially brought to trial after nearly half a century. The Washoe County Courthouse became the focal point of attention for the entire state. From early morning, dozens of reporters crowded the steps. TV news vans lined Virginia Street. Crowds of people pressed against the iron barricades, everyone wanting to witness the moment justice was served for the 2 lost girls. In the courtroom, Robert Clark Kessler sat in the defendant's row, his hair silver white, his hands trembling slightly from Parkinson's. Though over 70, he still maintained his familiar calm demeanor. In front of him was Mark Halverson, the Washoe County prosecutor, who led the prosecution team. Beside Holt were the cold case unit investigators, who had pursued the case for the past 2 years. As the trial began, Halverson stepped forward, opening with a low but firm voice, Your Honor, for 46 years the 2 little girls of Fallon Town have been silenced under the sand. Today, we bring them back, not just to recount the crime, but to close the unfinished promise of a deceased investigator. He presented each piece of evidence: DNA exhibits, Polaroid photos, the Stein tape recording, Kessler's signed confession, and the results of the exhumation at Silver Wash. Each item was projected onto a large screen in the middle of the courtroom. When the Polaroid appeared, the silhouette of a man in sunglasses standing in front of a white van, the entire room held its breath. "This is the last moment the two victims were alive," Halverson said, "and the man in the photo has admitted that's him." Holt sat in the back, quietly observing. Beside her, some of the victims' relatives, now silver-haired, held each other's hands tightly. Joanne's mother had passed away in 1998, but her brother was present at the trial, tears streaming down as he looked at his sister's photo on the screen. It was the defense attorney's turn. Richard Latham stepped up. He acknowledged that his client had committed serious wrongful acts, but pleaded with the court to consider mitigating circumstances due to old age, illness, and sincere cooperation after arrest. He said, "My client has lived more than 40 years in guilt and fear. He is no longer the man who committed that crime. Give him the chance to live out his final days in prison, not as a monster, but as a repentant man." Halverson rebutted decisively, "Age doesn't erase crime. 46 years of silence was a deliberate choice, not a mistake." He pointed toward Holt. Without DNA technology, and the persistence of people like Detective Holt, he would still be driving to Silver Wash every month, checking if his secret had been discovered. That's not repentance, that's the instinct of a criminal. In the witness portion, Holt was called to the stand. She presented the case-breaking process, from retrieving the Beecham files, excavating the tech storage area, to the moment she discovered the Polaroid camera and unprocessed film roll. Her voice was calm and steady, only slightly choking when mentioning Beecham. "He once wrote, 'Silver Wash, check the tech area.' I just finished what he didn't get to do." The courtroom fell silent, only the sound of pen scratching and the tape recorder humming. When asked one last time, Kessler stood, gripping the witness stand. "I have nothing to defend," he said. "I've lived longer than I deserve. I just want them home." Then he looked toward the prosecution row, where Holt sat, his cloudy eyes like fog. "Thank you for finding them." After 3 days of arguments, the jury retired to deliberate. Just 4 hours later, they returned with a unanimous verdict: Robert Clark Kessler, guilty of first-degree kidnapping and murder, ineligible for mercy. As Judge Evelyn Marston read the sentence, her voice clear and decisive, "The defendant is sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, to be served at Nevada State Prison." Court adjourned. Kessler bowed his head, his hands trembling slightly, but offering no resistance. As the police led him away, he turned back for one last look at the photo of the two Fallon girls placed on the evidence table. No one knew if it was a look of remorse, or just final acceptance. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Flashes popped continuously. Halverson gave a brief statement: "Justice may come late, but it never loses its way." Holt said nothing, just stood silently, the Reno wind blowing through her hair. That afternoon, she returned to Sagewood, now turned into a small memorial site established by the Fallon community. 2 stone plaques engraved with Melissa Turner and Joanne Price's names stood side by side, below the words, "Never Forgotten." 1979, 2025. Holt placed a bouquet of wildflowers at the base of the plaques, and whispered, "We're home." On the way out of the park, Holt opened Beecham's notebook. The last page still bore his shaky handwriting. "Don't let time bury the truth." She smiled faintly. Now the truth had been unearthed, not just from the ground, but from deep within the forgotten years. The Robert Clark Kessler trial closed, but its echoes still reverberated across Nevada. It wasn't just a sentence for one crime, but an affirmation: no matter how long time passes, the ghosts of justice still know the way back to the light. 1 month after the trial, the town of Fallon, lit up in the most solemn memorial ceremony since 1979. Hundreds of residents, Students, retired police, and the victims' relatives gathered at the central square, where a large photo of Melissa Turner and Joanne Price hung in a black-framed glass case. Under the words, "Never Forgotten," bouquets of wild flowers were laid in long rows, the scent of lavender mingling with desert wind, making the atmosphere both mournful and serene. The Fallon mayor gave a brief speech. "Justice came late, but today we bring our two girls home together." Beside him, Detective Karen Holt stood silently, holding Harold Beecham's notebook. She didn't speak, just looked at the two photos and whispered, "Harold, we did it." In that moment, the wind rustled through, the stage curtain fluttering lightly, like a response. After the memorial, Churchill County authorities announced that the entire Sagewood Fun Park ruins would be completely demolished. The park, once a summer symbol of the region, had become a crime relic. No one wanted to see it anymore. On the day the bulldozers rolled in, Holt was there. She watched the Silver Serpent roller coaster frame collapse in the sunlight, the last rusted steel beam falling with a dry, resounding thud, closing the dark chapter of Fallon. 2 weeks later, at the Reno Police Department headquarters, Holt was honored in a formal ceremony. She received the Nevada State Justice Medal, the highest award for investigators who crack cases over 40 years old. When receiving the medal from the regional FBI director's hand, she said only, "I did what others started, and I believe someone will continue the rest." The quote was splashed across newspapers the next day as a symbol of perseverance and loyalty to the truth. Yet, as public attention began to fade, a new undercurrent emerged. One morning in early August, a plain brown envelope without a sender appeared in the cold case unit's mailbox. Inside was an old typed sheet, with just a few short lines. "There are more girls who went missing in 1981. They all have one thing in common, a white van. No signature, no fingerprints, just a faint cigarette smell on the paper." Holt read it, her heart pounding. She immediately checked the NAMI's database. In 1981, 3 unsolved disappearances in the Nevada-Arizona border area. All teenage girls, vanished after last seen hitchhiking, and one witness back then had mentioned an older man driving an old white van. Holt printed the files onto the table, marking the overlaps, timing, location, and vehicle type. A chill ran down her spine. Robert Kessler had been convicted, but the white van, the symbol of the crime, might link to others. She handed the envelope to prosecutor Mark Halverson. He frowned. "Who do you think sent it?" Holt replied, "Maybe someone involved, or someone who knows what we don't yet." Halverson was silent for a few seconds, then said, "If this is true, Fallon was just the beginning." That evening, Holt sat alone in her office. The dim light reflected off the investigation board, now filled with red strings. She pinned a new note, scribbling hastily, 1981, white van, 3 missing girls. The night wind from the Sierra Nevada blew through the window, carrying desert dust and distant echoes of the past. Holt gently closed Beecham's notebook, placing it beside the anonymous envelope. On the cover, his old words were still clear, "Never let time bury the truth." She smiled faintly. Perhaps time hadn't buried anything, it just hid it temporarily, waiting for the next person to find it. And this time, Holt knew the new investigation had just begun. 1 year after the trial, Detective Karen Holt drove Highway 50 back to Fallon Town. The Nevada desert stretched vast and silent, as if it had never held any crime. Today she wasn't there to investigate, but to fulfill an unfinished promise, to Harold Beecham, who had started the Fallon Girls case, nearly half a century ago. The person she was meeting was Michael Beecham, Harold's only son. They met in a small coffee shop overlooking the square, where the victim's memorial photo still hung. Michael was in his 40s, thin build, with somber but warm eyes. When Holt arrived, he smiled. "I heard you still keep my father's notebook." Holt nodded, pulling the old leather-bound notebook from her bag, its cover cracked, edges yellowed. "It belongs to him," she said. "Every word in here led me to Silver Wash. Without Harold, no one would have found the truth. Michael flipped through the pages, his fingers stopping at the last line, silver wash. Check the tech area. He exhaled, eyes welling up. My father died still haunted by this case. Now I know he was right. Holt smiled lightly. He wasn't just right. He left a path for me to follow. She placed her hand on the notebook. Justice came late, but it came. Michael nodded slightly, gripping the notebook tightly, as if holding his father's legacy. That afternoon, they went together to the site where Sagewood Fun Park once stood. The entire park had been demolished, leaving only flat ground. In the center was a new memorial plaque, engraved with Melissa Turner, 1965, 1979, Joanne Price, 1965, 1979. They were found because someone never stopped looking. Desert wind blew through, fine sand swirling around them. Holt stood silently, watching the plaque reflect the sunset. All the memories flooded back: the night she discovered the Polaroid photo, the excavation under the tech room, and the moment Kessler confessed everything. Now the forgotten souls had finally come home. Michael placed a bouquet of lavender at the base of the plaque. My father always said some cases never end. They just need someone patient enough to come back. Holt replied softly, now it's truly closed. As evening fell, sunlight dyed the sand red. Holt gazed at the empty expanse, where children's laughter once echoed. In the wind, she thought she heard Beecham's voice again, hoarse but steadfast. Don't let time bury the truth. Before leaving Fallon, Holt stopped by Memorial Cemetery, where the two girls were buried side by side. On the headstone was a simple inscription, brought home after 46 years. She placed Harold Beecham's police badge on the grave, the item his widow had sent her the year before, then whispered, justice came back with them. Back in Reno, Holt submitted the final report. The last page had just a few short lines. Fallon Girls, 1979 case officially closed. Suspect Robert C. Kessler, sentenced to life without parole. 2 victims identified and returned home. Harold Beecham's notebook returned to family. She filed it under resolved historical case, then sat silently, looking at Beecham's photo on the wall. The light reflected off his gentle smile, making her smile unconsciously. Deep down she knew she hadn't just closed a case, she'd fulfilled a deceased man's dream. The next morning, Holt drove away from Fallon. As the car crested the hill overlooking the desert, she stopped. In the distance, the memorial plaque gleamed in the early sun, standing out against the empty ground, once Sagewood Park. She whispered, no one really disappears, as long as someone remembers them. She turned the car around, and drove off into the morning wind. Behind her, the Nevada desert remained vast and quiet, but now with a silver milestone in the sand, where justice was found, and time finally yielded to the truth. In the story, Fallon Girls 1979, justice arrived late, thanks to 3 very American factors: human perseverance, Beecham and Holt community strength, and advancing technology. From details like Holt examining the Polaroid under UV light, to reveal the Silver Serpent logo, excavating silver wash with GPR, to DNA matching at FBI's CODIS, we see a familiar lesson in today's American life. Don't overlook small clues, and let the data speak. Practical application: families should store and digitize photos, items, documents. Those small things can be key evidence years later, like the MT bracelet. The community also plays a role. An anonymous envelope sparked the 1981 investigation. If you see something unusual, a white van lurking near schools, someone offering rides to minors, report it immediately to 911 or local tip lines. Prolonged silence is complicity. Personal safety lessons are clear. Don't hitchhike with strangers. For rideshares, always verify vehicle driver codes. Share real-time trips with loved ones. Enable safety check-in. As citizens, participate in jury duty. The Reno jury weighed DNA, cassette tapes, confessions for an objective verdict. That's how we turn faith in justice into action. And finally, don't let time bury the truth. Like Holt returning Beecham's notebook, and Fallon Town erecting a memorial plaque at the Sagewood site, we can turn loss into meaningful memory. Support NAMIA's funds. Join victim remembrance days. Teach kids safety skills. Justice may come late, but it needs our persistence, cooperation, and preparation from small daily habits. Thank you for joining us on the journey to close the Fallon Girls 1979 inches case, where justice was found after nearly half a century. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue exploring other mysterious cases with us, where the truth always waits to be brought to light.